Good morning, Africa, and welcome to this edition of Africa Good Morning. We will be bringing you the latest in news stories from across the continent and beyond. My name is Glenora Shipura, and this is Diana Master.
A very good morning to you, Africa. Glenn, the last time we spoke, you said you wanted to take table tennis lessons?
Yes, I do. I wanted to actually try out in tennis, but that didn't work out, so I'm thinking
Excuses. Well, Glenn, this is your sign because today is World Table Tennis Day. So this is your sign to go register for those courses.
At the end of the year, I'm a pro in table tennis.
I will hold you accountable. Table tennis is not only a matter of competition, it is also a vehicle for positive social change, a healthy, worthwhile use of leisure time, and an opportunity to bring people together, an excellent tool for social inclusion. This sport has a unique value where people from different ages, gender skills, or physical condition can play together. Let's take a look at World Table Tennis Day.
Welcome back. Let's get into our news stories. Now, villagers kidnapped a day after Nigeria police patrol. At least 22 people have been abducted from a kidnapping hotspot in Nigeria just one day after it was patrolled by Nigeria's police chief. This stretch of the Abuja-Kaduna highway in northwestern Kaduna State is notorious for attacks blamed on armed gangs, known locally as bandits, who run huge money-making kidnapping operations. Now, local residents told the BBC that large numbers of bandits clad in military uniforms and wielding sophisticated weapons stormed Angwaya Maji village, which is located close to the highway, on Sunday night. Now, they reportedly went from house to house selecting their victims before marching them away at gunpoint. Many people thought it was a military operation until some of the victims who escaped later returned to say they have been kidnapped. It follows last week's horrific attack on a busy train traveling from the capital, Abuja, to the city of Kaduna. Earlier this month, there were reports that Kaduna's airport was attacked.
Now in Sudan, 23 people believed dead after sinking of boat in the Blue Nile. 29 people were on board the vessel when it capsized and sank in southeastern Sennar province, according to the state-run Suna news agency. Sudanese authorities reported Monday the sinking of a boat on the Blue Nile and said at least 23 women are believed to have drowned. There were 29 people on board the vessel when it capsized and sank on Friday in southeastern Sennar province, according to the state-run Suna news agency. All of the passengers were women except for the captain, who survived along with 5 passengers. The report gave no reason for the capsizing. The women were daily laborers working on farms in the Suki region and were returning home when their boat capsized. 13 bodies were retrieved and rescue workers were searching for 10 others, Suna said. The Blue Nile is an important transport route for people and goods in the African nation.
Now, in our next story, scabies outbreak worries Health Ministry. Now, the Health Ministry is working around the clock to make sure clinics and hospitals in the Ohangwena region are stocked with treatment for scabies after an outbreak that has afflicted over 2,000 learners and teachers in the region. The Executive Director of the Health Ministry, Ben Nangombe, has confirmed that the disease was first detected a few weeks ago and has spread like wildfire. We have dispatched some ointments this week. We have treatment in stock at the Central Medical Store, but we're still ordering because this is serious and widespread and has affected so many people, said the ED. He added that health officials were working closely with regional authorities to monitor the potential spread to other regions as well. But in the meantime, people are encouraged to maintain proper hygiene and to hang out their blankets in the sun for ventilation. Scabies infestation may be complicated by bacterial infection, leading to the development of skin sores that in turn may lead to the development of more serious consequences such as septicemia, heart disease, and chronic kidney disease.
Moving on over to Mozambique, inadequate exit strategies and support lead former terrorists to consider rejoining extremist groups, said the UN. The United Nations indicated on Monday that African governments' inadequate exit strategies and support for former terrorists lead them to consider rejoining extremist groups such as the Islamic State. In a report, the United Nations Counter-Terrorism Committee Executive Directorate issues several warnings about the terrorism situation in Africa, among them inadequate exit strategies and support provided to former terrorists after they leave reintegration programs, leading them to consider rejoining terrorist groups. Failure of the relevant authorities to take advantage of the positive role that civil society, community and women can play in preventing terrorism, building resilience and reintegrating former fighters, insufficient coordination of anti-extremism initiatives between the national and community levels, which undermines efforts to understand and better support communities and families. As for the international aid and capacity building partners, the CTED recommends that they provide comprehensive human rights support to governments to facilitate a culture change within security forces. There are 784,000 people internally displaced by the conflict, according to the International Organization for Migration, and about 4,000 people have died, according to the ACLED Conflict Registration Project.
Now, Tanzania in urgent need of 470 police stations. Tanzania is in urgent need of 563 Grade B police stations, with the country currently having to make do with only 93 countrywide, something that adversely affects the force's operations. Now, the police stations serve as primary emergency response center with operations that run for 24 hours a day. These stations also meant to house Type A jail facility that books and holds persons for under crimes before they are arraigned and turned over for remand. Now, the statistics were made available yesterday in Parliament by Home Affairs Minister Hamad Yusuf Musowani. According to the minister, the need is huge and therefore the government will continue to build police stations as far as funding is available, while urging MPs to participate in the construction of police stations in partnership with the community. We have a serious shortage of police stations. For example, we have 93 B police stations, yet what we need is to have 563 stations, said Musowani. Now we'll be back with more news right after the break.
Have you received a loan from NSFAF? NSFAF loan is the same as any other loan. It must be paid and settled. NSFAF has a set of guidelines on how you can repay your loan and become debt-free. Therefore, it is important that you, a former beneficiary and a responsible Namibian, show your patriotism by helping pay back your loan and thus helping NSFAF become a revolving fund for the benefit of future potential students. By failing to pay back your NSFAF loan, you risk being blacklisted or having a court order against you. So arrange with the fund to pay back your loan today. For more information on how you can repay your loan, visit our website at www.nasfaf.na or visit our Facebook page or Twitter. Do the right thing and hashtag #paybackthemoney.
Welcome back to Africa Good Morning. Moving right along and continuing with our top stories. Terrorists are planning to attack Ghana. The Minister of National Security, Albert Khan Dapa, has stated that the government believes terrorists are plotting an attack on Ghana due to insecurity in most neighboring nations. Mr. Khan Dapa said that Ghana's security agencies are on high alert and prepared to thwart any such operations, and that they remain on high alert to avert terrorist infiltration with proactive measures, counter-terrorism operations along the borders in the country. He added that safeguarding the country is a key priority for all state security agencies. Ghana has so far not been attacked, but we believe that we have to hold ourselves at all times to ensure that if there is an attack, we believe that they may be planning, but we believe we have to do what is necessary to ensure we overcome them, he said. Mr. Kandapar said that these threats have been characterized by crime, land and chieftaincy disputes, piracy and the activity of secessionists, adding that a number of measures have been introduced to deal with the threats.
In our next story, U.S. pushes to suspend Russia from Human Rights Council. Now, the United States will ask the UN General Assembly to suspend Russia from the Human Rights Council, the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations said, after Ukraine accused Russian troops of killing dozens of civilians in the town of Bucha. Now, a 2/3 majority vote by the 193-member assembly in New York can suspend a state from the council for persistently committing gross and systematic violence of human rights. Now, speaking in Bucharest on Monday, Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield said Russia's participation on the Human Rights Council is a farce and wrong, stating that they believe it is time the UN General Assembly vote to remove them. Now, Thomas-Greenfield told Reuters she aimed to put the move to suspend Russia to a vote in the General Assembly this week. Since the Ukraine invasion began on February 24, the Assembly has adopted 2 resolutions denouncing Russia with at least 140 yes votes. Moscow says it is carrying out a special military operation to destroy Ukraine's military infrastructure. Now, the United States has said war crimes have been committed in Ukraine and U.S. experts were gathering evidence to prove it. The General Assembly has previously suspended a country from the Human Rights Council in March 2011. It unanimously suspended Libya because of violence against protesters by forces loyal to then-leader Muammar Gaddafi.
Calls to Ramaphosa to open inquiry to expose sexual predators at churches. A rape survivor has lashed out at churches involved in covering up sexual abuse and urged President Cyril Ramaphosa to institute a commission of inquiry to lay bare some of the atrocities taking place at some of the country's faith-based organizations. Recent reports of rampant allegations of sexual assaults on minors in churches led to clergy member Reverend June Dolly Major sounding the alarm. In an interview with 702 FM, Dolly Major said it's appalling how these pastors attribute their actions to being on medication or a moment of weakness. Dolly Major explained that although girls are also raped, it is predominantly altar boys who are prone to the sexual abuse. I am requesting this of the president because thousands of boys and girls have been raped for decades and decades, and these institutions have covered it up, said Dolly Major. She is also cautioning parents to believe their children when they come forward, as the words, "I believe you," carry a lot of weight for survivors, especially for the healing process. As a survivor herself at the hands of a predator from a renowned church, she accuses the churches of often staying silent to protect the institution. With this request to the president, she would like to see churches and leaders of churches to face criminal charges for their actions and also for the cover-ups to be exposed.
In our next story, more than 10,000 school dropouts per year. Presidential Advisor on Youth Matters and Enterprise Development, Desiree Matthias, says although primary and secondary education is mostly delivered at the government's cost, more than 10,000 pupils drop out of schools annually. She was speaking at a discussion on the state of early childhood development hosted by the Capricorn Foundation in Windhoek recently. Last year, the Education Ministry reported that over 30,000 pupils did not return to school following the 2019 COVID-19 lockdown. Now, Matthias said the high dropout rate is a risk to investment in the education sector. Approximately 89% of our public schools currently have access to the basic infrastructure of water supply, but sanitation, electricity, and the internet are some of the threats to education, she said. Now, Matthias said the government has endeavored to improve the quality of education. Matthias said with the second Harambee Prosperity Plan, the government has recognized there is a discrepancy between investment made at primary school level and non-performance at secondary and tertiary level. Now, the country currently has 3,100 integrated early childhood development centers, of which 900 are privately owned and 2,200 are community owned and managed.
Tunisia MPs risk death penalty over online session. Tunisian MPs face charges that may carry the death penalty for attending an online session of the suspended parliament last week, legal and political figures have said. The session was condemned by the Tunisian president as a failed coup attempt. The legislators stand accused of having attempted to change the political system and to cause disorder, said former MP Samir Delou, who attended the session as quoted by French language Reality's website on Monday. The former dean of Tunisian lawyers, Abderrazek El-Kilani, has announced the creation of a national committee to defend the MPs and raise public awareness of the serious charges they face, Mosaic FM website reported. Last Friday, several MPs, including the leader of the Islamist Ennahda party, Rached Ghannouchi, were summoned by the anti-terrorism unit after they attended the online session. During the session, they voted to nullify exceptional measures taken by President Kais Saied last summer, which included the suspension of the parliament. After the session, the president dissolved the parliament and condemned the meeting as a plot against the state's internal and external security.
Now, amidst climate change, a growing population and people consuming more of less sustainable food, how will we feed our future world? More on this right after the break.
Now, in our next interview, we see the futuristic farms that will feed the world. Amidst climate change, a growing population, and people consuming more of less sustainable food, how will we feed our future world? Efficient farming with less water will become more and more important, especially in Africa, where climate change will have a significant impact on future food production. In this episode of Free Thinks the Future of Food, efficient farming in the Netherlands is producing 20 times more food using only a quarter of the water. It is one of the most sustainable agriculture systems in the world. Let's take a look.
If you want to feed the world in 2050, then the next 40 years we need to produce the same amount of food as we did over the last 8,000 years. And that gives a little bit an indication of the pressure on the food system. We just face a huge challenge with a growing population, with a change in consumption behavior, with the climate crisis. How do you secure your food production? The real secret is the sustainable production. It should be with less inputs, less fertilizer, less pesticides, less water. It needs to be sustainable, otherwise we will destroy our planet. Yeah.
The security of the food system is one of the world's most pressing challenges. But the story of how this small country became an unexpected food superpower might just have some answers for how we tackle it.
Consider this. If everyone on Earth ate the diet of the average American, that would require all the habitable land to be used for agriculture, and we'd still be 38% short. And that's right now. What do we do when there are 2 billion more people? Well, the key is more exciting than it sounds, and that's efficiency. Basically, how do we produce a lot more on the land we're already using and do it using a lot fewer natural resources?
When it comes to sustainable agriculture, one country has seemed to crack the code. Bolstered by a national commitment to produce twice the amount of food with half the resources, the Netherlands has become the world's #2 food exporter.
There was a very close collaboration between the government, science organizations and the industry. And they started out of a common interest. So they say, okay, yeah, we want to go for sustainable production, but everybody was aligned.
Everyone involved in the system was aligned and embraced innovation to reach that shared goal, and that has driven efficiency on a level unmatched anywhere else in the world. If there's one place that approach is most clear, it's in their unrivaled greenhouse growing operations.
There's a very nice example about tomato, which really gives a good insight in how we want to produce our food in a sustainable way. So if you produce tomatoes in an open field situation in Spain, then you will end up at the end of the growing season with 4 kilograms per square meter. If you do this in a high-tech greenhouse in the Netherlands at the moment, you will end up with 80 kilograms per square meter, which is 20 times more. But the best part of the story is that the 80 kilograms of tomatoes, we do it with 4 times less water compared to an open field situation. And water is one of the big challenges that we face. We just had a cup of coffee. Do you know how many liters of water were needed to produce that cup of coffee? Rough guess.
10.
150. So high technology offers really a possibility of producing a lot of food per square meter in a sustainable way.
The Dutch lead the world in tomato yield while using a fraction of the water that other countries use. But it's not just tomatoes. Measured by yield per square mile, they're the world leader in the production of chilies and green peppers and cucumbers. Number 5 for potatoes, onions, and carrots. The list goes on. But the bottom line is they've been able to get so much out of so little.
If we are able to produce 80 times more with 4 times less water, that's great. That's great news, I think.
Most people know that greenhouses allow a grower to tweak every little thing. But the Netherlands is taking it to the next level. They've perfected the greenhouse as the ideal environment to continuously test and implement all kinds of ways to optimize growth. From things as simple as testing what hues of LED lights can increase pest resistance and improve nutritional value, to things as crazy as moth-killing drones.
So at the moment we don't have any products who can control actually the moths, and finally they will produce caterpillars, and those caterpillars can do a lot of harm to many different crops. Well, that drone is able to detect the moth, also to see how it's flying, and then with his wings, propellers, he will crush actually the moth.
Wow.
There's a relentless drive towards innovation to create better and more efficient growing techniques. They've even started taking the human touch completely out of it. Some of the latest tech relies on AI to learn plant behavior and constantly adjust conditions without any input from a farmer.
For example, what we're testing in this compartment is a climate computer. So we have different sensors, and it's actually, we measure the plant activity. And based on the plant activity, the computer is actually controlling the whole climate by itself.
Ultimately, the key to solving our global food challenge isn't just in relying on super efficient food producers to carry the weight for everyone else. It's learning from and adopting that technology. At the World Horti Center, you see that effort firsthand in an ongoing experiment. They've built basically a greenhouse within a greenhouse. Inside the larger structure, they're able to replicate any climate on Earth to figure out what modifications need to be made to realize the same yields they're getting in the Netherlands in any other country on Earth.
We have a cooperative project going on with Colombia, and we can in fact we can emulate the current climate conditions in Colombia, put their crop in and see how crop behaves under the circumstances that we have in Colombia. We can totally flip the seasons around. We can make it a sunny day on Christmas.
Right.
We can close the curtains on a sunny day and make it completely dark. I think in the long run, the future of the Netherlands should not be to be a producer for the rest of the world. We should be a developer for the rest of the world. We are the country that will export our knowledge on creating production facilities all over the world.
Innovation starts really by bringing all these networks together. In the world we live nowadays, you need to link up with other people. You can't do it on your own. We need to produce more, we need to do it with less inputs, and we need to do it better.
Thanks for watching. If you like the future of food, stay tuned for our new series, Future of Cities. Subscribe to FreeThink now to be the first to see it.
Welcome back to Africa Good Morning. We now cross over to Zambia, speaking to Mike Sichula. Good morning, Mike.
Africa, good morning. I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing there?
We're doing well. Now, in your first story, Zambia and Rwanda have signed 7 memorandums of understanding following a 2-day state visit of President Paul Kagame. Can you tell us more?
Yes, President Paul Kagame arrived in Zambia on Monday, and he departed for Kigali yesterday. During this 2-day state visit, the two presidents oversaw the signing of 7 memorandum of understanding between Zambian state agencies and as well as agencies from Rwanda. One of the agreements is borders on the Zambia Revenue Authority, as well as trade and investment cooperation, development cooperation in the field of immigration matters, in the field of fisheries and livestock development, as well as in the field of health and agriculture and livestock. So these are some of the memorandum of understanding that the two presidents, when President Kagame was on Zambia, they also saw their representatives sign this memorandum of understanding. Then the President Hichilema also took this took advantage of this visit to showcase some of the tourist attraction in Zambia. We talk about the Victoria Falls, as well as the new constructed Kazungura Bridge. And it is expected that from this visit, a number of Rwandan tourists are going to come to Zambia, preferably using Rwanda Air, and also the Zambia Airways that has been created under the International Development Corporation may be used as one of the vehicles to promote tourism and trade between the two nations.
Interesting indeed. Now, amidst a hike in the price of fuel, a local taxi operator running the version of Uber has come under pressure from a new entrant in the market. Can you kindly add more details on this?
Yes, this is something that has taken social media by storm in terms of fierce competition that has been developed by another new entrant in the business of Uber, the version of Uber. What we have already is a transport sector called Ulendo. Ulendo is a Zambian-owned company that provides the services of Uber, like you've said, in terms of providing taxis here and there. But what has been happening is that this taxi operator has more or less like hiked the prices in terms of the fares and the like. So in this vein, another company called Yango, which is believed to be owned by the Russian nationals, has come on the market, and they're offering way cheap fares. For instance, for a kilometer of 65 kilometers, somebody is paying less than $3, which is very cheap. I mean, it's the high price of fuel. Because on Friday last week, the Energy Regulation Board decreased the price of fuel. So meaning bus fares and taxi fares have gone up by about 10 to 15%, which has actually come more or less like a blessing to this new taxi operator, because they are offering cheap fares, and it is also affecting the other the operator called Ulendo, which has been offering these taxi fares. So social media has been taken by storm, and a lot of people are preferring to use this new entrance and forgetting about the bus fares as well as the taxi that has been in existence for some time.
Yeah, I guess you have to be competitive in this market. In your next story, in a bid to reduce the teacher-pupil ratio, the government has started the process to recruit 30,000 teachers. Can you expand more on this?
Yes. In terms of the teacher-pupil ratio, in Zambia currently, what we have is that one teacher is attending to about 60 to 75 learners, against the standard of one teacher to 45 learners. So the government, in trying to reduce this gap, they did highlight in the 2022 national budget that they are going to recruit 30,000 teachers. So the process started this week to recruit 30,000 teachers. However, even if the government is going to recruit this number of 30,000 teachers, the deficit of teachers in the country will still remain high, because currently the deficit is about 100,000 teachers in order if the government has to reduce the teacher-pupil ratio. So this 30,000 is not that much, but however, it is one of the biggest national recruitment of teachers in the history of Zambia that has happened. So a number of teachers have been applying across the country. Then also our viewers need to know that in Zambia, there are currently over 60,000 trained teachers but not employed. So it is expected that half of that will be taken this year, and probably the government has promised that they will continue to recruit more teachers in the coming years to reduce the number of trained teachers who are not employed. And also, like I did, I've said on this platform, Zambia is providing a free education policy. So a number of schools have been overwhelmed with high enrollment numbers. So it is expected that, yes, this number is going to address the teacher-pupil ratio, but more needs to be done in terms of continuing to recruit more teachers so that the deficit can be reduced.
All right, and finally, in what seems to be good news, Zambia's Jani Sikazwe is part of 8 African referees selected to officiate the Qatar World Cup. Can you briefly explain this to us?
Yes, Jani Sikazwe is one of the shining stars in terms of refereeing in Zambia as well as on the African continent and in the world. He was at the Africa Cup of Nations in Cameroon. Though his stay there was not very well, he was hit by a heat wave, but his stroke, but he has picked up and he has officiated in the country. So this call for him to be at the World Cup is one of those confidence that the FIFA and CAF has in Jani Sikazwe to be among 8 African top referees that have been selected to be at the showpiece. So a number of Zambians are happy that their man, despite not performing well in Cameroon, he has seen that FIFA is giving them a hand. So a number of people are happy, and we all congratulate Jani Sikazwe for this achievement. He's been to the World Cup before, so this will be his second appearance at the World Cup.
All right, thank you so much. That was Mr. Mike Sichula giving us news on the ground. Thank you, Mr. Mike.
Thank you very much, Africa. Good morning.
All right, moving right along. It seems like winter is coming. Let's stick around and see what the weather is like for the rest of the week.
Thank you for staying with Africa Good Morning. We're just now in Zambia. We now cross over to South Africa, speaking to Ari Hogat. Good morning, Ari.
Yes, good morning to both Glenora and Diane. Nice to speak to you this morning. Very good morning.
Yeah, nice to speak to you too. Now, I understand that after more than 2 years, the COVID-19 state of emergency was lifted by President Cyril Ramaphosa, but political parties and unions have mixed responses. Can you tell us more?
Indeed, there's mixed response. It was coming for a while. Obviously, adjustments needed to be made. The state of emergency has been there for quite a while, and there's been concerns that that's been a controlling arm of the government. So accusations from some parties are that the state of emergency is done, but the regulations or it's going to be enforced now just by new regulations by the Health Act. So that was a concern. So of course, there's also speculation of a 5th wave coming up, but that the government said that they will monitor month to month and as it happens, if it happens. So there's winter time is a concern time, but there's also, excuse me, more concerns about the vaccination rate at the moment. Still, the 18 to 35-year-olds is a problem. COSATU also indicated that they were concerned about the 5th wave. That was a statement made by the union. And in the last 24 hours, there were still 1,500 positive cases that was recorded. And so that is still a challenge in South Africa. Unfortunately, day to day, that's the infection rate of 6.2%. So that is still a reality in South Africa.
All right. Now, petrol prices are worrying everyone everywhere. We understand the South African government has been lauded for the planned cut in petrol levies of R1.50, but concerns are also raised that South Africa might need to sell off too much of its oil reserves to accommodate the levy cut. Can you tell us more?
Yes, R1.50 is great news for South African consumers, but it's a short-term arrangement. It is just up till May. So it's kind of a month arrangement, and I think everybody in government is kind of hoping that the oil price will go down. Everybody in the world is hoping that this Ukraine-Russia conflict will end, so that the dollar price, crude oil dollar price, will come down. As it is, the fact at the moment to generate that R1.50 levy cut, South Africa need to raise roughly 6 billion South African rand to accommodate that. And what they suggested was to sell off extra, it is, let's say, excess oil stock that they do have, and then they probably need to sell off about 60% of the stock they have. The directive from government is that South Africa need about 20 or about 10 million litres of oil reserves, and that will last South Africa about 20 days if they need to put that into petrol. So selling off stocks, they're going to create money, but it's also going to put the fuel supply under pressure if something happens. So that is a concern.
Now, we are all a little bit worried about the upcoming winter season and its impact on the flu season. And I understand that the latest influenza report by the National Institute for Communicable Diseases of South Africa indicated that in 2022, there have been sporadic detections of flu cases in South Africa, and new COVID-19 regulations could result in a more intense flu season in 2022. Can you tell us more?
Yes, I think globally as well, like in South Africa, there's been less talk about flu, influenza, the last 2 years, and everybody's been focusing on COVID-19. Everybody's been talking around us here, asking, is flu still around? Because you get symptoms and you're not sure, is it COVID-19 or flu? I think everybody experienced that the same in Namibia and all over the world. There's terms that they have for that. They call it the interconnected factors, and there was also a term called flu-rona, combining the two terms, flu and corona. So at the moment, well, the fact is that South Africa have annually 6,000 to 11,000 flu-related deaths. That was the figures just before COVID-19 started. So that's a high number, 6,000 to almost 11,000 deaths annually. Reports that came out in July said that there were just 50 flu cases and no deaths. So that doesn't make sense. So it shows you that there's many flu cases that was normally flu that came under the umbrella of COVID, it seems. So that is a concern. How that's going to pan out, but flu is seemingly still a reality. Winter coming up in Cape Town, it's almost it's the rain season, and also the risk at schools with the lower. With the changing of regulations at schools and creches, that is also a concern for them. That they say that it's the influenza monitoring system. They say that there will be more flu now because of schools and creches not having masks.
All right, Ari, can you briefly tell us about the South African power utility Eskom plan to extend the life of the nuclear power station Coburg by another 20 years?
Yes, briefly, it's been built in 1976. It started in 1984. They want to increase it by another 20 years, but lots of regulations still need to come in place. The biggest concern for the International Atomic Energy Agency is that the aging of management. And so it's got to do with maintenance of the site. So there's big speculation, or there's a big concern about Eskom not being able to manage maintenance on these sites.
All right. Thank you so much, Ari. That was Ari Hochad giving us the news on the ground in Cape Town and in South Africa. Have a good day, Ari.
Yes, lovely to talk. Great day, everybody. Bye-bye.
All right. After the break, we will be taking a look at the economic news. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Africa Good Morning. We now take a look at our economic news. Now, Uganda overtakes Tanzania as in most profitable regional unit for DTP Group. Diamond Trust Bank's Uganda subsidiary overtook Tanzania as its most profitable regional unit in 2021 on the back of improved earnings and stabilization of non-performing loans in the unit. Now, the Uganda unit saw its gross profit rise by more than a double to 1.01 billion Kenya shillings in the 12 months to December 2021 from 437 million Kenya shillings in 2020. Now, this took it ahead of DTP Tanzania in terms of contribution to the group's earnings, with the Tanzania unit's gross profit rising by a quarter to 834 million shillings from 664 million Kenya shillings in 2020. Now, the Kenyan arm continued to provide the bulk of the lender's earnings, reporting a gross profit of 4.39 billion Kenya shillings, which represented 66.3% of the group's total. Now, DTP Uganda led the group in relative growth in almost all categories in the balance sheet, hence its faster growth in earnings compared to the other units. Now, the Uganda unit raised its customer deposit by 26.3% to 48 billion Kenya shillings, while DTP Tanzania was up by 12% to 56 billion Kenya shillings and DTP Kenya by 8.7% to 226 billion Kenya shillings. On the loan book, Burundi recorded the biggest percentage jump at 33%, albeit on a low base of 1.5 billion to 2 billion, while DTP Uganda's loan rose by 28% to 23 billion Kenya shillings. Now, Kenya and Tanzania's loan books were up 3% and 8.3% to 171 billion and 39 billion Kenya shillings, respectively.
Drivers queue for hours as Kenya reels from fuel shortage. Kenyan motorists endured another day of major fuel shortages on Monday, with hours-long queues and strict rationing at petrol stations as pumps across the country ran dry. The government blamed hoarding and panic buying for the snaking lines at Bowser's that worsened over the weekend, but oil dealers said they were owed outstanding subsidy payments from the state. At many locations in Nairobi and elsewhere, motorists able to find petrol after many hours in line with cars, motorcycles and minibuses were limited to a rationed amount. The crunch began last week in Kenya's west following a row between oil marketing companies and the government over subsidy payments, sources said. The government pays oil providers to subsidize costs at the pump for motorists, but these companies said they were waiting on 4 months of outstanding payments. The Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority said at the weekend that the government was working to settle all arrears owed to dealers, but the government blamed hoarders for the shortfall and insisted it had sufficient reserves to supply the East African nation of nearly 50 million. Under an agreement with the government, retailers capped the price for petrol this month at 135 Kenyan shillings per litre, whereas black market operators have reportedly been selling at 160 shillings as the shortage bites.
In our next story, Zimbabwe mines see 145 billion rand funding shortfall over the next 5 years. Now, Zimbabwe's mining industry sees a funding shortfall of $10 billion over the next 5 years, a challenge compounded by erratic power supplies and exchange rate volatility. Now, while Zimbabwe has the world's third biggest reserves of platinum group metals, plus gold, diamond and chrome mines, development has been stemmed by political instability, economic collapse, and rules that deter foreign investment. Now, last year, Zimbabwe announced rules forcing exporters to transfer 40% of their foreign currency earnings to the central bank instead of 30%. Now, that's exchanged into local currency at little more than half the parallel market rate. Those foreign exchange losses pose a risk to the mining industry, said the chamber, a lobby group that represents companies including Impala Platinum and Anglo American Platinum.
Now, shareholders of NBL to thirst all year. Shareholders of Namibia Breweries Limited may not receive any dividends this year, as the company's hold on dividends is expected to clear either by the end of the year or early next year. The hold was imposed as part of the company's deal to sell 51% shareholding to Heineken NV at the end of last year. The deal is set to have Heineken dominating the Southern African alcohol market, as it is also buying up Distal Group Holdings Limited. Distal and NBL are the heavyweights in the Southern African alcohol industry. NBL's stake that is offered for sale is valued at about 3.5 billion Namibian dollars, but the actual buyout amount is still undisclosed. At the 2022 interim financial results presentation last week, NBL Managing Director Marco Wenk said the deal was still under approval and the entire process will only be completed by the end of the year or early 2023. Because of this, despite the company earning an interim profit of 292 million Namibian dollars, up by 42.8% from last year, no dividends will be paid. However, not all hope is lost, Wenk said, and should the deal not go through, the board will revisit the decision and probably pay out a special dividend. The interim results for the 6 months ending 31 December 2021 show that NBL earned revenue to the tune of 1.53 billion Namibian dollars, up 10.6% from last year's interim. The latter increased by 27.3% to 71 million Namibian dollars, delivering 31 million Namibian dollars equity income for the period.
Now let's take a look at the markets with our economic indicators.
Welcome back, and now let's take a look at the latest happening in sport with Ari Hogad.
Good day everyone, time for international sport and soccer news first. It is news from the English Premier League, a game that was played after the weekend, and it is Arsenal that played against Crystal Palace. That game was played at Crystal Palace, and it is the home team Crystal Palace that won by 3-0. That's a great result for Crystal Palace, but also a big setback for Arsenal in their hopes to achieve the top 4 position in the Premier League. The Premier League top 4 teams, they of course go through and qualify for the Champions League to play against the top teams in Europe. At the moment, Arsenal is in 5th position after the result. They've got 54 points after 29 games. They've played a few games less than most of the teams around them. In 4th position at the moment is Tottenham Hotspur. They've got 54 points as well, but on 4th position because of a better goal difference, but they've played 1 game more on 30 games. In 6th position is the West Ham at the moment. They've got 51 points after 31 games. And then Manchester United, they still have an outside chance to get into the top 4. They've lost plenty of points the last few games, but they've got 51 points after 30 games, and they're in 7th position at the moment. Arsenal play at home next. They play at home against Brighton. That is the next game for them this coming weekend. And Tottenham Hotspur, they away to Aston Villa. Now we continue with golf news. It is the Masters, the US Masters at Augusta in Georgia that starts on Thursday. Always a highlight of the golfing calendar. News from the tournament is that Tiger Woods, the 5-time champion, is still not confirmed if he's going to tee off in the first round on Thursday. He's currently in the draw to tee off on Thursday, but he indicated that he might even decide as late as Thursday morning if he's going to play in that tournament. Hopefully there is a standby or reserve player at the venue on hand. You don't want Tiger Woods to take away somebody else's position if he's not going to play. Another player that did confirm that he is going to be playing on Thursday is Bryson DeChambeau of the USA. He's currently number 19 in the world now. He dropped 5 places down from number 14 from the rankings on week to week. Bryson DeChambeau in the news because he was out injured for 6 weeks and he came back to play in the match play tournament in Austin, Texas, and also last week played in the Texas Open that was in San Antonio, but he missed the cut. He's recovering from hip and wrist injury, but he indicated that despite advice from the medical team not to play, he said that he's definitely going to tee off on Thursday in the Masters. And now in international sport, we move on to tennis news. And news from the tennis world is that the ATP, the men's ATP Tour, they've announced that they will implement stricter penalties on court misconduct. It's not been a good year for men's tennis this 2022, with several misconducts been happening. High-profile players, starting with Daniil Medvedev at the Australian Open. Then also it was Alexander Zverev in the Mexican Open that even went to the extreme to hit the umpire's chair with his racket and almost hitting the umpire. He got a 8-week suspended fine or penalty. And then also the biggest culprit in the year so far has been Nick Kyrgios of Australia. Been involved in several incidents. Almost seems like every time he loses his cool as well. Breaks rackets and also swears at the umpire. And one time also his racket almost hit a ball boy. But what happened to Kyrgios was that he got, for the last 2 tournaments, he got a combined fine of $60,000. But there's been a call that that must be increased, or there must be a penalty of suspension rather, because obviously these players earn millions of dollars, and the $60,000 are not going to hurt their pocket much. So that's from the ATP. They will implement stricter penalties on court misconduct. And now to conclude today's international sports news, it is Formula One racing news. And this coming weekend, it's the 3rd race of the season. That will be the Australian Grand Prix that's happening in Melbourne. So it is after the first 2 races, the points table at the moment is Charles Leclerc of Ferrari. He's leading on 45 points. He earned the 1st and the 2nd place so in the first 2 races. And then his teammate Carlos Sainz is in 2nd place on 33 points. 3rd position, Max Verstappen with a single win. In the 2nd race, 25 points. And lower down in 5th position at the moment, Lewis Hamilton on 16 points. Also news from the Formula One Grand Prix is that Sebastian Vettel, he indicated, or it was confirmed, that he will race in this Grand Prix in Australia. He missed the first 2 races in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia because of COVID-19. And he was replaced in that races by Nico Hülkenberg. He's the reserve driver. So it is Sebastian Vettel. He will be in action for Aston Martin at the Australian Grand Prix on Sunday. So that's international sports news for now. Hope you have a great day, and we talk again tomorrow. Goodbye.
That was Ari with the latest in sports. Now let's take a look at the highlights. Villagers kidnapped a day after Nigeria police patrol. In Sudan, 23 believed dead after sinking of the boat on the Blue Nile. Scabies outbreak worries health ministry. Uganda overtakes Tanzania as most profitable regional unit for DTB Group. Those have been your highlights.
And with that, we've come to the end of our show. My name is Glenora Shipura.
And I am Diana Master. Until tomorrow, goodbye.